Hello, my name is Lewis and welcome to Gathering the Magic. Today we're looking at a budget Tom Bombadil deck tech. Tom says as long as there are 4 or more lore counters amongst sagas you control, Tom has hexproof and indestructible. Whenever the final chapter of a saga you control resolves, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a saga card. Put that card onto the field, triggering once each turn. This deck is all about those enchantment-loving cards, playing every saga known to man and going so value crazy that we overwhelm our opponents into oblivion. Now, let's get right into Tom the Bomb.
Don't call me that.
As always, we're starting off the deck tech super hot with all of that ramp. First up we have Mana Dorks in Avacyn's Pilgrim to tap for a Plains, and Elvish Mystic to tap for a Forest. We have 2 more 1-drop Forest tappers in Finethorn and Llanowar Elves. There's Cultivate and Kadama's Reach to both search your library for 2 basic lands, putting one on the field tapped and the other into your hand. We have Farseek to search your library for a Plains, Island, Swamp or Mountain, putting it into play tapped, and Rampant Growth to search your library for a basic land, putting that card into play tapped. There's Nature's Law to search your library for a forest card, putting it onto the field untapped, and Harrow that first you sack a land to cast. Search your library for 2 basic lands, putting them onto the field untapped. For our final 3 we have some classic rocks in Commander Sphere to add 1 mana of any colour in Tom Bomb's colour identity, with the sphere also being able to be sacked for some card draw. And Felwar Stone to add 1 mana of any colour that a land an opponent controls could produce. And finally, we have No, we don't have Soul Ring because Soul Ring doesn't work in 5 colour decks. I'm so sorry, Soul Ring. I've failed you. I promise you'll be in the next budget brew.
Don't forgive you.
Before we get onto those enchantment loving cards, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Subscribing is completely free to do and it helps our channel grow and grow as we head towards 5,000 subscribers. Another way to help support the channel is to use our referral code gathering-the-magic when signing up to Card Market, and shout out to Elaborate Ryan for using our code. You love to see it. Before we move on to those sagas, let's look at all those enchantment loving cards. First up we have Enchantress's Presence, a Mesa Enchantress that say whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. We have more of the same in Satyr Enchanter to draw a card whenever those enchantment spells are cast, and Sithis, Harvest Hand to do exactly the same, but you also gain 1 life. There's lifelinking Jukai Naturalist that says enchantment cards cost 1 less to cast, and Moonblessed Cleric that when ETBs, search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, shuffle and put that card on top of your library. With nearly a quarter of this deck being enchantment based, we need every card we have to gain us extra card draw, gain some life, and gain even more value by making future enchantments cheaper to cast. We have Hannah Ship's Navigator to pay and return target enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand, and Heliod, the Radiant Dawn, that when ETBs, return target enchantment card that isn't a god from the graveyard to your hand. It can then transform into Dead Heliod, RIP, that allows you to cast spells as though they had flash. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card your opponents have drawn this turn. With the 20 plus sagas we have to play, this deck is so enchantment heavy that we want all those ways to draw cards, gain life, and more whenever those enchantments are played. There's Dance of the Manse to return up to X non-aura enchantment cards with mana value X or less from your graveyard. If X is 6 or more, those permanents are 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. And Resurgent Belief to return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to the field. We have Gen Archon Weaver that you can pay and tap to sack an enchantment, return target enchantment from your graveyard to the field. And Flying Lifelinker Archon of Sun's Grace. This is whenever an enchantment ETBs under your control, create a flying 2/2 Pegasus token. For the final 2 we have Weaver of Harmony to give other enchantment creatures you control +1/+1. Also able to copy target activated or triggered ability you control from an enchantment source. And Zur Eternal Schemer to give enchantment creatures you control Death Touch, Lifelink and Hexproof. You can pay to make target non-aura enchantment you control become a creature too. You love to see it. I think I've ended a segment with you love to see it before.
Only like all the time.
Now it's time to go to Saga City and see every one of those sagas Tom the Bomb wants to play. First is Battle for Bretagard to create a human warrior and elf warrior token. Then choose any number of artifact tokens and or creature tokens you control with different names. For each of them, create a token that's a copy of it. And Binding the Old Gods to destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Search your library for a forest card, putting it onto the field tapped, and give your creatures Death Touch until the end of turn. We have Birth of the Imperium to create a 2/2 Astartes warrior token with Vigilance for each opponent you have. Each opponent sacks a creature, and draws 2 cards for each opponent who controls fewer creatures than you. and Elspeth Conquers Death to exile target opponent and opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater, non-creature spells your opponents cast cost 2 more to cast until your next turn, and return target creature card from your graveyard to the field, putting a +1/+1 counter on it. There's In the Darkness Bind Them. Lure counters 1, 2 and 3 is a 3/3 Wraith token with Menace. The Ring tempts you. Then for each opponent, gain control of one target creature they control until end of turn. Untap them and they gain haste until end of turn. The Ring tempts you. And long list of the Ents. Note a creature type that hasn't been noted by the Ents. When you cast your next creature spell of that type this turn, that creature enters the field with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. From Kaldheim we have Showdown of the Skulls. To exile the top 4 cards of your library. You may play those cards until the end of your next turn. And whenever you cast a spell this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And Song of the Erindale. To scry 2, then draw 2 cards. Create a treasure token and a 2/2 bird token with flying. And put a flying counter on each creature you control without flying. Why do we go so saga heavy? Because Tom is a slut for those sagas. The more we get going, the more likely he is to become indestructible and then fetch out more sagas from the top of our library. There's the Akroan War to gain control of target creature for as long as the AW stays on the field. Until your next turn, creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able, and each tapped creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. And the Bath Song to draw 2 cards, then discard 1, and shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library. Then add 2 blue. We have the Elder Dragon War to deal 2 damage to each creature and each opponent. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards, and create a 4/4 dragon token with flying. And the Eldest Reborn to make each opponent sack a creature or planeswalker. Each opponent discards a card, and put target creature or planeswalker from a graveyard onto the field under your control. There's the first Iroan Games to create a 1/1 human soldier token. Put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw 2 cards. And create a gold token. And the Horus Heresy. For each opponent, gain control of one target non-legendary creature they control until HH leaves the field. Draw a card for each creature you control but don't own. And starting with you, each player chooses a creature. Destroy each creature chosen this way. With 23 sagas, odds are we'll always have multiple on the go, meaning multiple with their last saga trigger, and Tom will then fetch out a new one straight away. Endless cycle means endless value. We have the Trickster God's Heist to exchange control of 2 target creatures. Exchange control of 2 target non-basic non-creature permanents that share a card type, and target player loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. And the Weatherseed Treaty to search out a basic land tapped. Create a 1/1 sapling token, and target creature you control gets +X/+X and gains trample until end of turn, where X is the number of basic land types amongst lands you control. We have Time of Ice to tap target creature and opponent controls. It doesn't untap for as long as you control the ice, and return all tapped creatures to their owner's hands. And Azusa's Many Journeys to play an additional land per turn, gain 3 life, then exile it, coming back as Likeness of the Seeker, that when becomes blocked, untap up to 3 lands you control. For the final 5 we have Besiju Reaches Skyward to search out 2 basic forest cards. Put 1 land card from your graveyard on top of your library, then exiling to become Branch of Besiju that gets +1/+1 for each land you control. And Michiko's Reign of Truth to give target creature +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Exiling to Portrait of Michiko that gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. There's Teachings of the Kirin to mill 3, create a 1/1 spirit token and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then exiling KTO that when attacks exiles a creature card from a graveyard, creating you a 1/1 spirit. Or exiling a non-creature card to give a creature you control a +1/+1 counter. And the Kami War to exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Return 1 other target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, each opponent discards a card. Then transforming into Okagachi, that when attacks, defending player chooses non-land card in your graveyard. Return that card to your hand. It gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the mana value of that card. Lastly, we have the Long Reach of Night to make each opponent sack a creature unless they discard a card. And transforming into Animus of Night's Reach, that when attacks it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of creature cards in that player's graveyard. Before we finish up with those lands, we're looking at the best of the rest in this budget brew. First is Extorting Thrall Parasite to pay 2 life and remove a counter from target non-land permanent. And Buyback Loving Clock Spinning to choose a counter on target permanent or suspend card. Remove that counter from that permanent card or put another one of those counters on it. There's Goldberry River Daughter to remove counters from other cards, putting them onto Goldberry. then moving those counters off Goldberry onto other permanents, also drawing a card. An unblockable Therapede that says when it deals combat damage to a player, remove a counter from target permanent. All these counter removers are perfect for our sagas that we may want to replay certain stages and really maximise that value before they disappear to the graveyard or transform. There's Glisser Sunslayer that when it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose 1 life, destroy target enchantment, or remove up to 3 counters from a target permanent. We have Power Conduit to remove a counter from a permanent you control, or put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And Experimental Augury to look at the top 3 cards of your library, putting 1 into your hand. Lastly, there's Flicker of Fate to exile target creature or enchantment, returning it to the field under its owner's control, and a classic counter spell in Negate to counter target non-creature spell. As we always do, we're wrapping up this budget brew with all of those lands. Starting off with the basics here, we have 7 plains and 4 island. There are 3 swamp and 3 mountain as they are our least used mana, and with the most we're rocking 8 of those forests. We have Command Tower to add 1 mana of any of Tom's colours, and Exotic Orchard to add 1 mana of any colour a land an opponent controls could produce. There's some classics in Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse to both sack and search out a basic land, putting it onto the field tapped. And as we're again running a 5 colour deck and really need to spread for every colour possible whilst keeping the brew budget, we're once more adding in all 10 of those budget 2 land options from Dominaria United to ensure we get Tom out as quick as possible. And with plenty of those cards that say to search out vague things such as Forest, this makes it even easier to fix our mana, especially in the early game. Tom is not only a great Lord of the Rings commander, but arguably already the most popular amongst EDH players. So why not start a budget and eventually build your way up to a big Tom the Bomb commander powerhouse? There we have it, that is the Tom Bombadil $40 budget deck tech. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Check out our link tree in the description box below for all of our social media and affiliate links. For now though, we're all tapped out, so I'll see you in the next video.